All right. Hello. So today, we're doing something a little bit fun. We have an actual goal of something we are going to try to build. So for a little bit of backstory, I recently, just for the fun of it, posted a TikTok for the first time in like maybe years at this point. I used to post like very regular dev updates, and they did like decently well. I got like 2K followers over there, so I was like consistently doing a lot better on TikTok than I was on YouTube for a while. Then again, YouTube subscribers are significantly better than TikTok subscribers. TikTok subscriber count doesn't matter at all. Anyways, let me go grab my phone because I just realized it's not in my pocket. But yeah, so my phone didn't like really charge that well last night, and I like woke up at 5 a.m. and did work on my car, which means I was using it constantly. So it's dead at 8 in the morning, as you do. But yeah, so that's charging over here. Oh. Hello, how goes it? Okay. So the thing that I did that has inspired this stream is this video right here. So let me see if I can get it focusing. So it's like nearly at 40k views, and what I basically did is I did the bouncing balls test, but for Brane script. But here's the thing. It was like totally a moment of like, oh, you know what? I could just do a while loop that does a billion iterations and then test how long it is. And like, I didn't really pay attention to this whole like nested word here. So I just like, you know what? This will be fun. I'm gonna do the fun benchmark. So I change up what I have here to 1 billion, and then just do cargo. Run example scripts, test the script. And then you see it runs, and it takes 400 milliseconds, which is less than C and Rust, which apparently that is how you get views on these platforms, is you accidentally rage baited onto people by doing something that doesn't matter very slightly wrong. Because like the entire point of this is like, oh look, my language can do something significantly faster than Python, because like what I'm trying to beat is Udon Sharp. Like that's what I'm trying to beat with my language. Or more specifically, I'm trying to beat like JavaScript or Lua, which would be somewhere in this range up here and not up here. So it's like, this is an absolute success even if I don't do the benchmark correctly. But of course, you know, that doesn't really matter when people's only exposure to you is seeing you incorrectly benchmark your language. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add in, over the course of this stream, the language features that we need to correctly do this benchmark. So we're going to copy the C implementation of this, which is specifically this this little program here, and oh, so they're using a random. Okay, so the way that they're having this not be optimized out in like a loop unroll is that they have just a random value there. So that's how this isn't being optimized to 0 iterations, because usually the compiler would be able to optimize this to a constant value, usually. But they're using random number here to make sure that doesn't get optimized out. That is, I didn't realize that before. We don't have to do that because I'm not doing optimization passes on my language. It's just, you know, the raw language runtime itself. And once we fix this, it will probably be slower than C and Rust, because, like, this is probably doing some SIMD, this is probably doing some SIMD. Does Java have SIMD? Okay, Java does have SIMD. So all of these are probably SIMD optimized. These might even be slightly SIMD optimized. So benchmark performance is probably going to drop a ton. We are not going to be as slow as Python, though. We're still going to be significantly better. We might even keep in step with JavaScript. I don't know though, because I don't have SIMD optimizations. We might need SIMD optimizations to keep up, but that's why we're going to actually do the benchmark. That way I can make another video on TikTok that will get 40,000 views. my true motivations. But okay. So here, in example scripts, let's actually create a new version that's just loop Brane script, and then when I ran the benchmark, I was using 32-bit integers, which 64-bit integers, which should be slower than what they're using, which are 32-bit integers. So let's just write out the script in its simplest form, and we don't have all the language features that we need to be able to fully implement this yet. So we need to actually add, we straight up need to add stuff. Is the code open source? For both the benchmark and the language, yes. So if you go to the Brane Reality GitHub organization, I think I have it linked in the in both like Twitch and YouTube descriptions to either my GitHub or the Brane Reality GitHub org specifically. I know I have the repos pinned on my profile. Yeah. So here we'll just get rid of everything. Then what are they passing in as U? What is U being used for? Simple sum? I don't know why they're modulusing whatever this is. All I know is that a buffer argument is being put in. So you are 932, because I don't want to have to implement a random function. And we'll drop this down to 10K. And then at the bottom here, we're going to say I is equal to add and so we're gonna have to implement something in the parser to be able to designate what our constants actually are, like the type of constants, or we need to implement casting semantics. We could implement casting semantics really easy. Just like that. Do I have to deal with... No, I don't have to deal with that. Do I? No, I don't, because it's an intrinsic. Alright, so that takes care of our first while loop. Let's do the second nested loop, which will be... will be J. So we have 10K, 10K, and then inside of here we have dereference the result of adding CA. So we have let A equals a pointer to 32-bit. Actually, no, this would be a slice type. Though we could do regular pointer arithmetic here. Okay, what do we want our allocation intrinsic to be? Could have it be new pointer. We could just have it be new and then have this take in just anything. I kind of like the idea of it just being new. Not audible? Am I? No, it looks like my mic is working. It's probably on your end. Because, like, that is very clearly my voice. I feel gaslit. Okay, so we need to do... I don't know what I want to call my, like, array types at the moment. A by I? I don't even know what U is supposed to be. And technically, this needs to be a... This needs to be a template. Which means I now have to implement at least intrinsics for this template. Which is fine. Intrinsics on a template is fine. Because I haven't even implemented, like, true function calls yet. So let's see, exactly what do we need to implement to get this benchmark to actually run? I think I'm going to keep constants as I64 for now. And we're going to have... They do kind of need casting. Do I need casting on IAD? or integer add. I don't know if I do. Can't believe this comparison. I need to work with my comparison instructions, but we're not worrying about that right now. Okay. Just going from the top, we need a templated slice generic. Templated slice generic that returns a slice. We need add memory bindings to function signature. Also need to add dereferencing, or rather implement pointer dereferencing. Implement pointer dereferencing grammar. So we already have the syntax. We just need to make R value and L value permutations of that do two different things. Like this should return an L value, this should return an R value with the actual value being represented. Yeah. Then we also need to implement modulus intrinsic function. Oh. After that, we need to implement a index intrinsic. Okay, I already have pointer referencing here. Pointer addition is just like more implementation, maybe more casting. I don't know if we necessarily need casting here. A lot of this should work just implicitly, I guess. When did Windows File Explorer get so slow? It's a recent thing. Also, when they nuked the performance of Task Manager as well, that kind of happened around the same point. Okay. I think the most important thing first is to add the ability for our runtime to actually bind memory to... Ah, this is true. Add pointer loading storing to runtime. Add allocation. So we're gonna have this alloc operation. And do I want it to be alloc of a type? I think I want this to be alloc alloc is basically a function. But I'm treating it as an actual operand because it kind of makes sense too. I mean, we could just kind of no, because call is its own thing. Plus, we can just put an intrinsic. I'm gonna say alloc bytes, and this returns. This takes in a value that is how many bytes to allocate. And then eventually we'll have different versions of this to allocate things in different ways. But for the moment, we don't need that. Oh. In here we should have mod or remainder. Yeah, there it is. Signed remainder, unsigned remainder, float remainder. Apparently I did float remainder. But yeah, these are the implementation of modulus, basically. That's all we need on the function side of things. It's an alarm that's been going off for the past little bit. So now I need to add alloc bytes to in passes. Hopefully it's an error. Nope. Yeah, and this is why I wasn't really a fan of the two-dot syntax. Because I want to be aware when these things change and be forced to update them. Okay, so we have the instructions for it. We have alloc in our bit code now, so we can actually use alloc. We just need to make an intrinsic for it. Oh. This is how tired I should have been at 2 a.m. instead of being awake. So yeah, let's add to our memory signature Brane backend, crane lift. Function context signature params push ABI parameter new self types actually valid. That should not be valid. Oh, it's just a U16. Is this just a U16? No. Oh, wait, that's right. There is module context. A pointer function. No. Module. Where's my pointer type? I do JIT value. Somewhere in here, there's... Right, because we don't do actual pointer types. We do JIT type. It's just a 32-bit integer because we construct the pointer from the actual pointer type. Good morning. Just new profile picture. There it is, self module target config pointer type. There we go. And then this is join the dark setting. Ah, indeed, I see you have. Yeah, I don't have it on my YouTube profile, but you can probably see. Yeah. Let's see. And yup. Hello. To catch you all up on what I'm doing, I'm basically adding the language features required to do this benchmark. And yes, I know it's not an actually good benchmark representative of anything, but I'm just doing it for the fun of it. And okay, so we have our memory bindings added to the function. Let's quickly add this into the CLI. So when we transmute this, needs to be a A pointer to a constant pointer to mutable I8. Oh, nice. Going true VR. So we need memory bindings here now. So I'm going to grab from an old version of Brane script. With the LLVM JIT backend. See, in that time I was doing a stack page, but I've realized I really do not want to do a stack page. So in here, what we do is pass that in as a pointer, and this is how we sandbox all memory access in the entire language. It's that the language itself has pointer types, but those pointer types are not represented as pointers behind the scenes. They're represented as I32s, which sounds similar to what Wasm does, but I took it one step further than Wasm did, where Wasm says, here, bind a section of memory to this module, and then we'll do bounds checking on every memory access to make sure that person doesn't access outside of that buffer that you've passed to them. Now, that is amazing for security, but now that means that every single time you do any pointer-related operation, there is a runtime bounds check on that pointer operation, which I use Rust. I love runtime. You would think that I love runtime range checking. I do not, because it is slower. So I came up with a method for doing range checking that isn't runtime, if that makes sense. So the way that we do memory bindings in Brane script is you have that 32-bit integer 32-bit integer that is the representation of a pointer. However, it's actually that the top 16 bits of that pointer references a memory page binding, and then the lower 16 bits of that represents the offset within that stack page. Now, you can represent things bigger than 16 kilobits worth of size, because you can put multiple bindings next together, and then regular integer addition on the pointer type like overflows as you would expect onto other bindings pages. Like it acts exactly like a regular pointer, but we no longer have to range check it, because now that we have this bindings page represents every single page that pointer could possibly point to. So we just have to allocate one vector that's 16,000 pointers long which isn't too much space on a computer. That's less than one texture, I think, in memory. It's like, yeah, most textures are larger than 16 kilobits. And you only need one of those per thread. But yeah, the bindings page, you then fill it up with either default pointers, so there's no undefined pointers there. So even if like the script tries to be malicious and tries to access something that it hasn't explicitly been bound, that it is bound, but to a default stack page. So either you mess up your own program because you mess with memory that you weren't expecting to mess with, and it's like, oh no, your script fails, but only your script fails and it doesn't affect anything else. Or, 1 second, I have to ban a bot. Or, we do what I'm going to do and set up guard pages. So, what a guard page is it's a page of memory in your operating system, which, when accessed, it throws an exception, and you get to decide how to respond to that exception. So basically, I would be able to throw an error at runtime if scripts accidentally access unbound memory, and it has 0 runtime cost, because as long as, well, I mean, it has very little runtime cost because you have 0 branching operations. It's branchless, so that works really well with CPU prefetching. It works really well with, well, speculative execution, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. The computer likes it a lot more than an if statement, significantly more than an if statement. So this is one of the ways that we are significantly faster than WASM and significantly more dynamic on how we use memory than WASM. Oh. The only potential problem at the moment is that we don't currently have a runtime. So I'm gonna say test alloc page. So we aren't actually going to allocate memory. We're just going to have a test alloc page, and we're going to say for b in moot reference to bindings page. There we go. We have our bindings page. Why am I so tired? I slept. And then I did like 1 hour of work. Why am I tired? But yeah, so now we've allocated memory for our program to work with that is in the shape and form of the way that memory is going to work when we actually fully write out the runtime. This is good enough for this test. Now in our actual backend, we need to implement pointer dereferencing. Wait a second, I just realized. Brain left, JIT function. Where are my load and store functions? Because I wrote load and store functions, right? I spent a lot of time on those. Wait, no, that was in the front end that I did load and store operations. So I'm going to on this one, figure out where I want to put this. JIT function. Let's put it right underneath JIT function. This needs to be a crane lift value. Which will just be a value. A little off topic to what you're currently working on, but I noticed the World Creators channel on your Discord after joining. What's the process of creating worlds going to look like? I haven't fully decided. What I currently have is a Unity-inspired editor written in C++ that is going to get a rewrite fairly soon. I just realized my microphone is very much in frame there. That's fine. Anyways. So currently it looks like a Unity clone basically, and then you use that Unity clone, you log into an asset server, and then you upload changes to assets to an asset server through that Unity clone. I definitely want there to be a desktop editor and for it to resemble Unity in its interface. Now, I also do really want there to be a in VR version of the editor, and now this is going to sound weird, but when I was working on Horizon Worlds, doing a game jam for Horizon Worlds, which it actually, due to recent developments, it looks like I might actually do more Horizon Worlds games jams. That will be a story for another time though. But one really cool thing about the Horizon Worlds desktop editor is because it was ported from their VR editor, like it's built on top of their VR editor. Their desktop editor is a shell over their VR editor, but the VR editor doesn't work very well anymore at all, which there's a lot of problems with that. But a benefit to that is that their desktop editor is multiplayer. So if I'm editing a world and one of my team is also editing the world, we can see each other and what they're currently doing, which there does end up being problems with because the editor has issues. So sometimes if somebody else in the world like deletes something higher up in the hierarchy tree, then what you're working on, there can be off by one index errors, and it can shift what you've currently selected, and like lots of like, there are so many bugs with it. It's really bad. But I really like multiplayer desktop editor as a concept. And I already liked VR multiplayer editor, like inspired by Resomat in use and all that as a concept. But I really like desktop editor as a concept because in a lot of like power user senses, like you need a desktop editor. Like Neos is cool. The Resomat is cool. But you need a desktop editor too. Especially if you're doing any coding. Coding is a lot more ergonomic without nodes. For any like super in the weeds stuff. But I also do want a VR editor, and I haven't decided. I'm like split between we refactor the desktop editor as it is, because I'm already planning to do a full refactor of the desktop editor, rewrite with Brane script and whatnot, and super integrating Brane script into that whole thing. But there's also another idea floating around in my head of, oh, you don't need Horizon Worlds works through streaming to a web browser and also streaming to web apps. The only way to do Horizon Worlds locally, like locally render what you're working on in your world, is to use the desktop editor, which is available through the Oculus desktop app. Yeah. Anyways, maybe wait a little bit longer before trying it. But Brane, where was I? Right. One concept that I have played around with is the idea of there not being a separate editor binary. Now, I very much want there to be a separation. I don't want creator tools in the main client of Brane Engine. Now, can creator tools be a plugin for the client? Yes, but I don't want them to ship by default to every single client. Very easily accessible, yes, but not by default, you having creator tools. And that's just kind of like a culture of what I want worlds to be like. I don't want everybody to experiencing the worlds to be expected to be a creator. And I want to draw like a hard line there of you have to want to be a creator to have access to those tools. Anyways, one idea I've played around with is the concept of having the editor itself be built in Brane's engine so that you would connect to your asset server, connect to maybe a runtime server if there are two people connected, and maybe whatever repository for your code and whatnot would be hosted on the asset server itself, if that makes sense. Because I do want to be very integrated with source control as well. That's just like, no engines I know of are like super well integrated with source controls and have like good diffing support and all of that. So yeah, most of them just have like a hey, I'm working on this asset right now, don't edit it. And I don't like that. I would prefer if tools had really good merge support, so two people could work on a scene at the same time and then merge what they want to keep between the two. But yeah, one concept is you connect to the server, and then the server, using the concepts of Brane Engine, you could flip a flag, and then because Brane Engine allows you to have the full suite of engine, the possibilities of a game engine at your fingertips, you could use that to then, in that world, once you turn on that toggle, it adds in features to edit the world through the server, and then the client would just use the regular client features to interact with those editor concepts expressed in the regular game engine form. I don't know if any of that makes sense. My brain isn't like, for some reason my brain isn't fully on today, but the idea is, instead of the editor being a separate binary, it's something that can exist within the engine itself. And that's something I might want to experiment around with. For now, though, it's just a separate, like, Unity clone-esque binary. Okay, so to evaluate a pointer, we need a reference, because I already have written the functionality for this in specifically the LLVM background. Somewhere in here. Here we go, Brane pointer is what I called it. And this is going to be a lot more ergonomic in Crane Lift than it was in LLVM. Yeah, that would be the benefit. So the benefit of building the editor that way would be, I would have to make a very, I would have to speedrun development on the engine itself so it could support all of the editor features. So it's like, immediately we have to create a UI framework. Immediately I probably put in hot reloading. Immediately, like, the threading model has to be good. All of the profiling features have to be put into the runtime of the scripting language, or like are part of the client and whatnot, and a lot of stuff like that. Yeah. It also means that I have to make the client be able to split between desktop and VR easily. Yeah. It would be a lot harder. Yeah, as a Resonate user, I expected that. Okay. So we have to do two things. Let binding is equal to instruction. We need to be able to maybe bit. Switching between VR and desktop is one of Resonite's best features. Do they have that? I know that a lot of the new platforms have that. I know Basis has that. I know Resonite apparently has that. Guess I have to do that too now, don't I? As long as I architect it to be able to do that from the beginning, it won't be too hard. I just have to actually architect it to do that from the beginning. Okay, let's see. In here, we need to search for shift. Rotate left. I don't want to rotate, I want to bit shift. There it is, I shift left. Now did I do... Oh, this is whether it's signed or unsigned. So I think I said not signed. Yeah. Let's see, what was I gonna do? Right. Actually, I want to do U shift. By an immediate value. The immediate value is by 16. And then I want to do probably I or and. Let's see, maybe it's a bit and. B and. There it is. B and by an immediate value, which is this. Yeah, it's a huge quality of life for everybody. Like, in the last Basis load test while it was going on, I switched to desktop, was able to mess around in Unity, upload my, like, actual avatar, because I figured out what was wrong with it, and then switch back into VR, all without leaving with the instance, and that was really nice. Alright, and then we need context. Builder function. Oh, this is how we get function params. So then in here we need to grab the entry block. That's in general one of the biggest advantages of this architecture, because a lot of the game engine features can also be super useful for not creator users, just packaged up slightly differently. Yeah. I'd agree. Function args. Builder block parameters. So I'm going to say bindings is equal to block params b Even if you don't want to learn developer tools, being able to decorate your home with cool stuff you found elsewhere, pictures you take on your friends, is super powerful. Yeah, and well, that's when I would say, like, that's when you would use creator tools. Like, you toggle on, like, this is my home world, and I'm going to turn on, like, creator mode for this, and then get access to those tools. But the question is placing stuff around a place, is that a developer tools thing? Or is that a I have persistence for things thing? Like, at what line is it a developer tool and at what line isn't it a developer tool? In my opinion, that particular use case sounds like it, unless you're creating a custom homeworld, like from scratch, that sort of behavior of like, this is an object designated to be able to be taken between different worlds as, I guess, a trophy of sorts. Like, this is, I mean, an object that can exist in multiple worlds. Then I place it within my world. That sounds like an instance where that use case should be handled through non-developer tools. The same mechanism under the hood, modifying and saving the world. I don't know that it should modify the world, though. Like, it should potentially modify an instance of the world, or because, like, I don't think it modifies the scene files of the world. And I guess with Resonate it's different because, like, in-game you are actively editing, like, the core structure of the world, like the scene. Like, you're just living inside a dynamic, for lack of a better word, like, you're in the Unity scene constantly in essentially editor play mode, and can at runtime move stuff around, delete stuff, and whatnot. I very much don't want that to be the way this engine works. I very much want it to be like an explicit, I am the creator of the world, and I'm going to flip on a toggle that lets me now access the ability to change this world. Now, if there are things like I want to be able to move stuff around in this world, place stuff in this world, that sounds like more of a persistence thing, like the ability to save the state of worlds rather than edit the pre-state of the world, like the source of the world, if that makes sense. Now, do I want to load the value at this pointer, or do I want to... Resonate persistence is sort of implicit. Yeah, and that's because there isn't the hard boundary that I kind of want. So it's kind of like a... Resonate works the way it does, in the way it wants to, and it works well. It's not the way I want stuff to work. So unfortunately I can't do it the same way they do, even if the way that they do it is really cool. Okay, I need to actually return the pointer now. Page pointer is... Oh, you can do load at memory at P plus offset. Oh, I like that. What's your reason for doing a hard separation? Mostly, primarily culture. I think Resonate is a little bit too developer brained, if that makes sense. Like, it works really well for anybody who is willing to jump in, learn scripting, pull stuff apart, but then that becomes the default mode of interacting with all content. So the instant you see anything cool, you're not going to just experience the thing in the way that the creator of that probably intended. You're going to go, oh, this is cool, but instead of being immersed and like experiencing it, I'm going to go and I'm going to rip it apart and see how it works. With, as opposed to like something in VR chat where like you sit there and you have to kind of like speculate about how that works. And I think that for the like vision of VR I have to work, like I think a control shift I still exists in most situations, like the ability to see the source code, but to actually like edit and interact with it, like I want it to be a very normie friendly platform and also a business friendly platform, if that makes sense, where with Resonate you give all the power to the user. With VR chat you give all the power to the world creator, but in my opinion not enough power, because their scripting system isn't good enough. I want somewhere in the middle where you have just ultimate power given to the world creator, and then like the users can become world creators, but I do very much prefer the worlds that you didn't create are to be experienced, not to be inspected. Like I want people to be comfortable making like full games in this, and I feel like to make full games experientiable, like to be able to experience a full game, you need to not be able to actively edit the source code of the game as you're playing it. And also, if you want to have like a competitive experience, I want the experience to be competitively viable, and like you need to be able to hide your source code from players in those instances, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, load. So we need to do 2 loads here. First thing we need to do is load another pointer type. Maybe I just directly do load and store pointer here. Do I want this check on every single load operation? Actually, it is going to be on every single. Yes. So I do want load operation to work this way. I don't think Resonite's usability issues are inherent to their approach. What you're talking about is mostly a permission issue. I think there's already a world in Resonite you can't take apart. The decision on the world creator, most just keep it enabled. Yeah, and I would agree that it is just a permissions issue, but it's kind of like a I want it by default to be the not that way. Because I want a different culture on. I just want a different culture. Brane, work with me here. Okay, we want... I think I'm gonna put pointer type into the context, maybe? There it is. Module, target config, pointer type. Maybe context will have pointer config or target config. No, it's okay. I'm used to it from Resomat users. Because at least conceptually I did take inspiration from Resonate. Okay, so in function context, I do need to store pointer type. Yeah. I'm excited for people to try it out too. It has been working on it for too long. Well, not too long. I've learned a ton, but it's time for it to actually be used, rather than me going, oh, it's gonna work this way, and it's gonna work this way. Actually get it in people's hands. Context, pointer type. Context, pointer type. Yeah. And like I could actually be building it faster if I was like not as concerned with certain details. But we're building this mostly correctly. Okay. We load the pointer type. I might have to do something like that where you can load from a pointer at an offset. So that'd be a good optimization. At the moment, we load bindings at offset. Can I do that? No. Memory flags. What are mem flags? Memory operation flags. Bit read only. Little Indian, big Indian, bit checked. Ooh, can move. That's okay. I see how these are used for optimization and whatnot. To use natural alignment for the given type. Do I want to enforce bit alignment? I think it makes sense to enforce bit alignment. Can do that much at least. Okay, and now moment of truth. Does it allow so this offset T2 into IR mem flags into Okay, so what's happening, I think, is that this is getting type coerced, and I don't want that, so we're just gonna stick with 0. Why is that an unsafe operation over there? That's kind of crazy. Context builder. That's cool. You can get stack pointer. Then we need to add page pointer. By offset. And then we also need to add pointer size. To both of these. There we go. And now back in here, we're actually able to index we need to do an integer immediate multiplication. Factory automation game. Foolishly thought we could finish in a 28-day game jam. 28 days is a fair amount of time, but what did your scope look like? That's usually that's the important question. Scope was yes. There's your problem. I cannot throw stones. I am not without sin. But yeah, scoping is the issue with hackathons. But yeah, we add. That is now our value pointer, and now, last but not least, we can finally actually emit the value. A lot of different ones here. Oh, there's atomic load. Well, we won't have to use that, but it is cool that it's there. Nice. Alright, I'll look at that. Actually, see, how much do I trust my OPSEC here? Just one more system. Indeed, just one more system. I love how node graphs look. I hate working with them, but I love how good they look. Tags aligned. Then wait a second. Pointer type. Ah, right. Wait a sec. No, because it's a runtime value, so I can't cook it in. Definitely better than writing a text. Yeah, and this is where I get in, like, my crazy ideas of having a coding language that works regardless of representation. So like having a really good API for messing with an AST, and then you could have a node representation of the language, you could have like a editor drop-down based implementation of the language, and all of them would compile to the same format, but you could have different representations of the grammar. That was a really cool idea I had and was going to try to do with the last version of Brane script. That was like the super scope creep version of that. And then you can also do functional programming in node graphs. And functional programming is a lot more intuitive in node graphs than it is in text. And that is my end game for BraneScript, would be to rewrite or write a new front end that is that type of BraneScript that has a text-based and node-based representation and possibly editor-based representation. And it could also be used in different editor systems, like make an animator that instead of hooking into a specific animation system, instead it emits scripts that statically check everything interacting with the animation system and like crazy stuff like that. But yeah. But all of that was like, you know what? We need the engine working first before we can like super innovate on stuff like that. And the main innovation right now, before I like solve programming, I need to solve the programming runtime. And that's like the actual innovation we're doing here. That we're gonna have the fastest scripting runtime. You'll make it better later. This is what I tell myself. And I ignore the there's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution. I'm just going to we're just not going to think about that. Somebody on the roof. Or in the roof. I don't know. Now we're just going to have this return. Ah, right, because they want 90% of reworking our game jam is ripping out the tech. Yep. All of the tech debt. Made some cool WIs to make maintaining and expanding the game more streamlined. Nice. Option value, found value. This needs to be some value. There we go. And let's also do... Where's I remainder? Unsigned remainder. Signed remainder. Oh, it's signed remind. This room. There it is.